The underground training hall in Seoul's Itaewon district didn't look like a place where legends died. It looked expensive. Polished wooden floors. Walls lined with traditional weapons that cost more than most people's cars. In the center stood Park Min-suk, a man whose name made businessmen nervous and politicians careful. He ran protection operations across 3 districts, and his authority came from one simple rule: never show weakness. Tonight, he was bored. His 20 men sat watching him demonstrate combinations on the heavy bag. Each punch landed with the sound of controlled violence. Min-suk's black belt was tied perfectly, his white uniform crisp despite an hour of training. He was 42, but moved like he was 25. In the far corner, almost invisible, stood a woman wiping down equipment. Her name was Mina Igunbor, though most people here didn't know that. They called her the cleaner, or sometimes just pointed when they needed something. Her dark skin made her stand out in a country where she was always different. She wore a plain gray uniform, her hair pulled back in a neat bun. She'd been cleaning this facility for 3 years, arriving before dawn, leaving after midnight. Silent, observant, existing in a space between visible and invisible. Min-suk noticed her because he was looking for entertainment. His latest business deal had closed successfully. Money was flowing. His men were loyal. Everything was perfect, which meant he was restless. Powerful men get dangerous when they're bored. "Hey," he called out in Korean, his voice carrying that particular tone of someone who expected immediate obedience. "You, cleaner woman, come here." Mina's hands stopped moving. She looked up slowly, her expression neutral. The room went quiet. His men recognized that tone. Something entertaining was about to happen. "You've been watching us train for 3 years," Min-suk continued, walking to the center of the mat. "You must have learned something by now. Come show us what you've picked up. Just for fun." Laughter rippled through the room. Young fighters elbowed each other, already pulling out phones. This would be good content. Their boss playing with the staff. Harmless entertainment. Mina set down her cleaning cloth carefully. She didn't look scared or excited. She looked like someone doing mental arithmetic, calculating something nobody else could see. "Mr. Park," Mina said quietly in perfect Korean, though her accent carried the rhythm of Lagos. "I am just here to work. The equipment still needs cleaning." But Min-suk wasn't interested in excuses. He wanted a show. He'd built his entire empire on public displays of dominance. Fear worked best when it had an audience. Respect came from watching him win, again and again, against anyone who challenged him. "Just one round," he said, gesturing to the mat with a lazy confidence that came from never losing. "Show my boys that even a cleaner can throw a punch. It'll be funny. Everyone needs a laugh." His men were already circling the mat, their phones raised. They saw a foreign woman whose job was scrubbing their sweat off floors. They saw someone who existed to serve them. What they didn't see was the way her breathing had become perfectly controlled, or how her feet had quietly shifted into a stance that looked casual but was actually mathematical in its precision. The oldest instructor, a man named Master Han, suddenly stopped smiling. He was staring at Mina's hands. Mina walked to the edge of the mat. She removed her worn sneakers slowly, revealing feet that were calloused in specific patterns. The kind of calluses that told stories if you knew how to read them. She stepped onto the mat like someone stepping into familiar territory, not foreign ground. Maybe she learned from watching YouTube. One young fighter named June whispered loudly, triggering another wave of cruel laughter. "Someone should record this. It'll go viral." Min-suk began bouncing on his toes, throwing lightning-fast jabs into the air. He was genuinely skilled. 25 years of training. Multiple championship titles before he'd turned his fighting skills toward more profitable endeavors. In his mind, this would take maybe 30 seconds. A gentle takedown, some laughs, then back to his evening. Mina stood completely still. She didn't bounce or warm up. Her hands hung loosely at her sides, but her eyes were locked on Min-suk's throat, then his knees, then his hips. She was reading him the way scholars read ancient texts. "What's wrong?" Min-suk taunted, stepping closer to invade her space, testing if she would flinch. "Forgot how to move without a mop in your hands." Mina's voice cut through the mockery like a surgical knife. "Your stance is too wide, Mr. Park. Your weight is shifting right. Your left knee has an old injury. If you strike now with power, you will lose your balance." The room fell into shocked silence, so complete that the hum of the air conditioning suddenly became the loudest sound. It wasn't just what she said. It was the clinical, detached way she said it, like a doctor diagnosing symptoms during a routine examination. Min-suk's face flushed dark red. The laughter of his men died instantly, replaced by confused, uncomfortable silence. They looked at each other, wondering if they'd misheard. A cleaner was correcting a black belt. A woman who scrubbed their toilets was teaching their boss about fighting. Min-suk's pride, carefully constructed over decades, couldn't handle the public puncture. His jaw tightened. His breathing changed. "You think you can lecture me?" he hissed. Min-suk lunged forward, not with a strike, but with an aggressive shove meant to send her stumbling backward across the mat. It was a bully's move, born from wounded ego rather than fighting technique. Clumsy. Emotional. Everything he'd trained his men never to be. Mina didn't step back. She pivoted on her left heel, a movement so minimal it seemed like she'd barely moved at all. She simply wasn't where he expected her to be. Min-suk's momentum carried him forward. His lead foot slid on the polished wood. He had to catch himself with both hands to avoid falling completely flat. The sound of his palms slapping the mat echoed through the silent hall like a gunshot. Nobody laughed. Nobody moved. The phones were still recording, but the entertainment had transformed into something else. Something uncomfortable. Something that felt like watching a car accident in slow motion. Min-suk stood up slowly, his face a mask of humiliated rage. He brushed off his uniform, his eyes darting to his men to see if anyone dared smile. Nobody was smiling. They were leaning forward now, their expressions shifting from amusement to sharp, confused curiosity. "Lucky," Min-suk muttered, though his voice had lost its iron certainty. "You got lucky. That's all." He reset his stance, this time more seriously. His hands came up into a proper guard. This wasn't a joke anymore. This was about reclaiming dignity in front of the men whose loyalty depended on believing he was invincible. Mina raised her hands. She didn't take a traditional karate stance. Her lead hand was open, fingers slightly curved. Her rear hand protected her ribs. It was a guard that looked simple but felt wrong to anyone who'd trained seriously. It prioritized ending fights quickly over looking impressive. Master Han, watching from the corner, felt ice crawl down his spine. He recognized that stance. It wasn't from any sport. It was from something darker, something designed for survival in situations where second place meant death. "Mr. Park," Mina said softly, "you should stop now. You have guests arriving in 1 hour. It would be unfortunate if you couldn't greet them properly." The audacity of her words was gasoline on Min-suk's burning pride. Min-suk roared and launched a powerful roundhouse kick aimed at her ribs. It was a serious strike, one that would have hospitalized an average person. Years of conditioning behind it. Real power. Real intent. Mina didn't block it. She stepped into the arc of the kick, closing the distance before his leg could reach maximum velocity. She placed one palm on his hip and another on his chest, giving what looked like a gentle push, but was actually perfectly timed to work with his own momentum. Min-suk didn't fly across the room dramatically. He simply folded. His supporting leg gave out, and he collapsed onto his side, the air leaving his lungs in a sharp, audible whoosh. He lay there for 3 long seconds, staring at the ceiling, his black belt spread across the mat like a discarded ribbon. His mind was racing, trying to process what had just happened. He was trained. She was a cleaner. The math didn't work. The world didn't make sense. His men stood frozen. They weren't watching a fight anymore. They were watching their entire understanding of power being rewritten in real time. Min-suk scrambled to his feet, his breathing ragged and panicked. He looked around the room, seeing the faces of men who followed him because they believed he was stronger than everyone. Now that belief was cracking in real time, and he could see it happening. "This isn't over," Min-suk said, but his voice cracked on the last word. His hand moved to his waistband, to the small of his back where he kept a ceramic folding knife for emergencies. His fingers were shaking. "Boss, don't," June called out, genuine fear in his voice now. But Min-suk's hand was already moving, whipping forward with the blade. Mina's reaction was a blur of gray fabric and controlled precision. She moved like water, like inevitability. In one smooth motion, she caught his wrist, her thumb pressing into a nerve cluster. The ceramic blade clattered to the mat, harmless. She stepped behind him, her arms moving around his neck in a hold that looked gentle but rendered him completely immobile. She wasn't choking him. She was simply controlling the space where he needed to move, making resistance impossible. The problem with pride, Mr. Park, Mina whispered, but her voice carried clearly to everyone in the front row, is that it makes you predictable. You only respect what you fear. Without fear, you're just a man who never learned how to fall properly. She released him with a gentle push. Minsuk slumped to his knees, his head bowed. He wasn't physically injured, but something deeper had broken. The foundation of his identity had cracked open. Master Han walked forward. He didn't go to Minsuk. He stopped 3 feet from Mina and bowed deeply. A 90-degree bow reserved for masters of the highest order. I thought you were gone, Han said, his voice trembling with recognition. The Black Orchid of Lagos. They said you disappeared after the embassy incident. Mina wiped a bead of sweat from her forehead with the back of her hand. The quiet cleaner was returning to her face like a mask being carefully lowered back into place. I did disappear, Master Han. I wanted a quiet life. I like the simple work. It's cleaner than the alternative. The room of men was now standing, not from aggression but from desperate, confused respect. They'd spent 3 years walking past a legend, treating her like furniture, and she'd responded by making sure their equipment was maintained and their facility was spotless. Mina picked up her cleaning supplies. The floor is clean now, she said simply. Please don't track dirt on it when you leave. She walked to the door and disappeared into the hallway, leaving behind a room of men who would never look at anyone the same way again.
Thank you for watching this episode. If you enjoyed it, please like, drop a comment, and share with someone who'd love this story. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the next episode.